Welcome all to the London Hustings. This is the 8th out of 12 hustings that are taking place in order for you to have the opportunity to see and probe your potential leaders of this great and glorious party. I shall now hand you over to Janice, our administrator of the night.
Hi everyone. First of all, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Jones. She'll be our chair for this evening. Thank you, Liz. Just a few things to run through. I'm going to hand pens and paper out. If you could just pass them along, a few on each row. And after the break, I will take 7 questions from the audience for the candidates. To start with, we've got 7 questions which we've collated from the branches that have already been sent in, and then there'll be a beat the clock, then a break for you to all leave the room and get a drink while we sort out the next 7 questions from the ones. You don't have to send a question, only 7 will be chosen. And that's about it for now. I'm just going to quickly do a little thing to find out who's going first, and then I'll hand over to Liz. Thank you.
Gentlemen, I should like to introduce our leadership candidates. We have number 1, Ben Walker, NEC member, ex-leadership candidate, who hails from the southwest, Bristol. Number 2, we have Richard Brain, chairman of West London branch, from London. Number 3, we have Freddie Vatcher. He is the London regional chairman. All 3 will be answering your questions tonight, and all will shortly have 3 minutes to introduce themselves to you. Then 7 questions, which were sent in by the various London branches, will be put to each candidate, and they will have 1 minute to answer the questions. Then they will take 7 pieces of paper from the bowl and answer random questions. Then I, as the chairwoman, reserve the right to ask the final wildcard question, which will test them to breaking point. So we shall now start with Ben Walker, who's going to introduce himself to us for 3 minutes only. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Is this on? Yeah, all on? Good. Thanks for coming out tonight. It's brilliant to see so many of you and some faces that I recognise and some that I don't, which is good. I'm sorry I'm slightly late tonight. We got held up on the M4, I think, with a little bit of motorway work. So anyway, here now. A little bit about myself, which Liz has already covered, actually. I have been in UKIP since about 2011. I'm a current member of the NEC. Please don't hold that against me. Okay, no boos, no hisses. I am a dad of 5, believe it or not. My partner gave birth to a little girl on Friday night. So, thank you. Obviously, I did all the hard work, so thank you for the applause. But yeah. So I'm a bit of a family man. I run my own business, a construction business. I'm ex-Royal Navy, and I served in the Afghan War as well. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. What do I want? What do I want for UKIP? We're kind of at a crossroads now, guys, and I think you'll find that from the discussions that we'll have tonight. The truth of the matter is, we're polling it below 1%. We are hemorrhaging our elected support, and we've got some real problems when it comes to elections, which we've seen in the current Euro elections and in the local elections. I want to turn UKIP on its head. I am sick and tired of it being a political party that's run from the top and it forgets about its most powerful and important asset, you guys, the membership. I want us to be a grassroots-focused campaigning machine again, building from the bottom, because it's only when we do that that we're going to start to win elections again. So I want to do many different things, all of which I won't be able to cover in 3 minutes. But it's basically going to be a grassroots revolution driven by me, with you guys coming with me. It's got to be about the membership, and it's got to be about local politics moving forward. Because only when we do that and we have strong footings and foundations, we're going to be able to challenge for anything else. And I think it's time that we're now honest with ourselves and we get it right. Because like you, I'm sure, I'm tired of regional lists being handed down. I'm tired of the membership being ignored on many different issues from many different angles, and I think it's got to change. I talked about this in 2017, and it's like I'm still banging the same old drum now, but we've got to do it. But anyway, I'll come on to that later on, I'm sure, throughout the questions and throughout any closing speeches or such like. But again, thank you for turning out today. It's absolutely brilliant to see you all, and I look forward to answering your questions. So thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much to all of you for coming. Some of you have come some distance, I know, and I'm very grateful. I'm sure we're all very grateful. Fantastic candidates. It's been a pleasure the last week being at Hustings with them. Quickly, just want to say congratulations to Ben for his 5th child, a fantastic achievement. A fantastic achievement. I only have 4 children, but with Ben and I having so many children, it's clear that there's a problem in Darwin's theory. Anyway, I'm going to say a little bit about me. I've been working for 25 years, running a business in photography and software development. I did some work for the referendum party in the 90s. Ever since I was a teenager, I knew that the European Union was a Tower of Babel that ultimately would come crashing down. It seemed to me that it was built along the same lines as the Soviet Union, and it was a bad idea. It was going to sacrifice Europe's most important asset, its diversity. I kept going, voting for UKIP, and I became borough manager in 2016 for the referendum for Grassroots Out and Vote Leave, and worked very hard. I've stood for local elections and for parliamentary elections and for European elections for UKIP, and continue to support the party, obviously. I want to say a quick, very brief word about Gerard. Gerard obviously should be here. It's the membership who should choose who leads this party, not the NEC. I think it's a great shame. As some of you may know, I stood down when Gerard came into the leadership contest, and then I came back in when he was barred by the NEC. Quickly going to talk to you about my plans. You'll hear a lot of stuff about grassroots and how we're going to save the party. We are going to save the party, but the real question is how. And I've got very clear plans about how we're going to use software partly to achieve that. We're going to present ourselves much better publicly. We're going to make better leaflets, and we're going to canvass and gather data about who actually supports us, so we know where we have support, and we can knock on their doors on polling day to make sure they turn up to vote. And that way we're going to grow the party, because we're going to learn who supports us and what their addresses are. I'm also going to build software for a forum for the party, so that you, the members, will have much more direct contact with the leadership of the party, including the NEC, and you will have peer review. So the good ideas will be voted up and will come to the top of the pile, and therefore the leadership of the party will see the issues that do really concern the members, and the policies that really do concern the members, and the party management issues that concern the members. I'm going to have a head of HR. Is going to be the most important role that I appoint at first, because this room is full of talent, and in fact the party is full of talent, and it's never allowed to come forward, and because of various egotistical people in the past, anybody with talent has been shut down. That's going to end.
Hello, friends. I'm Freddie Varcher. I'm the regional chairman of UKIP in London. I've stood for virtually everything which my 2 predecessors have said is true, and I agree with it. It's not, but I will now try to be less collegiate. I possibly stood for a few more things as well. But this isn't about this. This isn't about the past. This is about the future, because we have to draw a line in the sand now. Because we can't keep on going as we've been going, because it's physically impossible to keep on going. We've gone from 24 MEPs to 0. We've gone from 7-8% to 1% in the polls. And these were reflected as well in other elections. So clearly something was wrong. Simply changing method is a bit like rearranging deck chairs. We have to have a different approach. This means new faces. I would certainly include colleagues and competitors in this race in a team, because it's ridiculous to exclude talent. I make precisely this observation that talent has been suppressed in UKIP because of egos and so on. And this is preposterous. This has been going on in the party for many, many, many years. And it isn't just a chance. It's by design as well. And this is not the time for conspiracy theories, but occasionally conspiracy theories are actually true. Now, my vision is one of a UKIP that resurges, a UKIP that people are proud of being members of. I'm going to refrain from saying again, because like me, I'm still proud of being UKIP. But my UKIP is a UKIP that has not altered. It's simply gone wrong in direction and emphasis. When we get politically relevant, we can strike hard deals if necessary, but more likely just fear into our opposition. Because I believe our opposition works like the stock market works, where I risk life and limb every weekday. And there are only two factors which operate in the stock market: fear and greed. These base motives sadly affect our competitors. I'm talking about outside of UKIP. We, of course, are not subject to such things at all. Or to the extent they are secondary. They're certainly not in mine. All of you will know from how I run London, it's run absolutely clean. Anyone can claim expenses from London region as long as they don't exceed that of the regional chairman. That means you can claim 0. Since I claim 0 and have always claimed 0 for everything. That is the way our party should be run, openly, transparently, and striking fear into the hearts of our enemies. Because without that, they will not alter. We do not just need a long spoon to sup with leaders of other parties. We need to hold their feet to the fire till they start whinging and crying that UKIP is great again. And this will not happen without you. I have nothing to offer you but blood, tears, toil, and that which is affecting my forehead right now, sweat. Thank you for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, our candidates are now going to answer 7 questions which have been handed in writing from a variety of London branches. And we shall start with the first question. What would you do to unify the party? Ben, you have only 1 minute.
Okay. Sorry? Oh, yeah, of course, the mic. Sorry. Right. To unify the party, I'll be very honest about this. It's going to be a very difficult job to do. There seems to be 2 very different fractions that kind of exist within our party at the moment. The first thing that we've got to get right is our structure and start to support the people that need it most, i.e. the members, you guys. Secondly, we have to have big shopfront policies which people can actually get behind. You know, we have to put this infighting to bed. There is no point in UKIP to try and succeed at the ballot box again, to just keep bludgeoning itself to death over matters which don't really matter too much. We focus too much internally. We should start thinking externally and concentrating on our messages and getting them out. So to unify the party, it would be exactly the same as I'd want to try and unify with the public. Being someone who's relatable, amenable, can deal with people. That's what we need now. We need to be able to sell ourselves outside.
The first thing that has to be dealt with is UKIP is the most unified party in the country. It may surprise you to learn that. But the other parties are absolutely riven by our fantastic Brexit policy, which is putting a spotlight on the politicians in this country like never before, and people don't like what they see. So we have to remember that that's the basis of our unity, that we agree on the party's manifesto and policies. The issue of contention, of course, is Mr. Robinson. My view is that there is nothing to be gained for the party by him joining. And there's nothing to be gained by him from joining. And also there's nothing to be gained by his cause and our cause, which is the proper, fair judicial treatment of criminals, rapists, and those who target children. So we need to be able to support that cause. We don't need Tommy in the party. We don't need Tommy in the party, and we don't really need to have a vote on it. Those who support it can, and those who don't have to.
Tommy doesn't even want to join the party, so let's kill that one. Let's move ahead. Success has many fathers. Failure is an orphan. Let's make UKIP successful again. People come back, they'll forget all the internal squabbles, and we'll be united because they'll have prospects of being able to alter the fate of our country. And that is what we're in politics for. We're not in politics for power. We're certainly not in it for money. We're in it to change things for the better. Mold things according to our view of what is better. And we know that our view is based on sincere values, not on any of the calumnies that have been thrown on us, hurled at us by the liars in the mainstream media. So, success. How do we get to this success? It's quite simple. Focus on basics, on the things which are enemies in the Brexit party, and do not think they're not enemies. They are currently enemies. Till they come back and repent and pay us some money, they will be enemies. We'll talk about immigration and its links to a myriad other things, and the Brexit party and Nigel will not dare to touch that. That'll bring the people back, and that'll bring success back, and that'll bring the party together. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, now for the second question in writing from the London branches. Should the prescribed list be abolished? Ben, 1 minute, please.
So anyone who doesn't know what the prescribed list is, it is a list of organisations which people have been members of, joined, whatever. They are not allowed to join UKIP. Now, I actually believe that list has served us very well for a long time. It's one thing that we have which differentiates us from any other party, because they don't do it. And we do, and I believe that we should, and I think that list should stay intact. And if anything, it should be added to with the likes of all the nutty left-wing kind of groups that exist as well. They should be added to that list, but it should stay.
I agree with everything Ben has just said. There's no question that we need that list. We are frequently accused of racism and being far right. We're not far right. We're actually far middle. And we need to stand up to this. And that's one of the best ways that we have when we go on TV or radio or have to argue with anyone. We can say to them, look, if you're ex-BNP, you can join the Tories or you can join Labour, but you can't join UKIP. So understand that this party is punctilious to make sure that we have the right people, sensible people, decent, moderate people in the party. We hang on to it. Whether it should be added to is another question. Arguably, Antifa members might be excluded, but certainly we need to hang on to it. And I don't see that it needs to be waived for anybody in particular. We need to have rules and we need to uphold them.
Basically what the others said, but because we need to get media attention, we might throw open to debate whether or not the Labour Party should be added to the proscribed list. I would vote against it. I would definitely vote against any such extension. However, the list itself is not complete. It simply lists the parties that definitely are. It also adds parties that are extremist in nature are automatically already on the list, so we don't have to have 16 varieties of Lashkar-e-Taiba or something like that. They're already proscribed. This is only sensible, and of course, for the avoidance of doubt, without any doubts whatsoever, this list must stay. It is what I am tempted to call clear white space, but it is now politically dangerous, so clear blue sky between us and the other political parties. We must have that list and keep with it. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now have the third out of 7 written questions from the London branches. We are polling at 0% in the Brecon by-election. We're polling less than the monster raving loony party. What does that tell us? Ben, 1 minute.
We've all kind of touched on this slightly already. It tells us that our current direction hasn't worked. It tells us that if we carry on in the same vein, we're going to end up going nowhere. Lower than zero, exactly. So it tells us that what we're doing isn't right. It tells us that all of our associations, all of the decisions that we've made recently aren't working. Yes, people will say that the Brexit Party have impacted on that slightly. Of course they have. But the truth is, it's not just down to them. It's down to us. And like I said when we opened, we have to be honest about that. And it's time for a change in direction.
I often hear the question, should we stand in elections like Brecon where we'll do badly? And the answer is yes, we should stand. We should stand everywhere. We should never give up. It doesn't matter how few votes you get. That's better than zero. Let's keep standing. This party went through 17 years in the doldrums, in the desert, trying to get somewhere. Nigel Farage going around and other leaders going around and talking to village halls with 4 people coming to listen. But we kept going and we kept standing, and eventually people saw that what we were saying was right and mattered, and we won the referendum, we won the vote. So we mustn't give up. We keep standing. It doesn't matter how badly we do. Let's keep standing. Let's try harder. Let's do better. Let's keep going. And the reason why we'll do bad in Brecon is primarily because the Brexit Party and other parties are offering our number one policy of Brexit. So we're going to have to take ownership of that issue, and we will be able to possibly quite soon, depending on what happens in Westminster.
Precisely as has been said, but additionally, Brecon and Radnorshire is, I believe, 3,700 square miles. There's nothing we can do about this. It's so huge. We can't canvass. We can't campaign in our normal way. Nonetheless, we must stand. If we're a political party and doesn't put candidates out, we're not a political party, and it's as simple as that. The feeling that you had when you felt that you wanted to vote UKIP, but that name wasn't on that ballot paper. It is free advertising for us as well, and that is why I am collegiate here again, and we must field candidates. Also, from little acorns, great oak trees grow. We are not doing things purely because of winning, otherwise I would not have stood for the about 9 elections for UKIP I would have stand. I expected to lose every single one of them, and in that I was, my hopes were not fulfilled, but my expectations were fulfilled. We are doing it because it's right. That's all that we need to do, and we keep on doing what's right every single time. Things will come back to us. No more Tommy diversions and all of that nonsense under me. None. Thanks.
Yes, of course. Yes, I'll go from Freddie the other way. Yeah, for sure. Ladies and gentlemen, we now have the 4th out of 7 of the written London branch questions, and that is, how can social media be used to improve our image, attract new members, and attract donors? 1 minute each, starting with Freddie and then going this way. Thank you.
We use experts, and some of you might know that I spent the last 3 hours in the company of a certain gentleman with a beard who may take up addressing a madrasa or mosque very soon. It's my good friend Carl Benjamin lurking in the shadows behind, and we are doing social media together, including that sometimes it is necessary to say we were wrong when we were very wrong. Sometimes it is necessary. Churchill's speech about never, 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 never yielding says, except in matters of good sense and honor, and where there's no good sense and honor in going on the wrong track. Otherwise, of course, social media is excellent. This is where we're getting across to the young, and we're getting across to an increasingly techno-savvy older generation as well. The mainstream media are never going to be on our side. That's a good never for me. They're just not going to be. We remain mavericks. We remain a threat to them. When we cease to be a threat, that's the time when we may need to cease to exist. Or we become really mainstream because the others give up. But till then, social media is very important. We use it in all its forms, fully, and with the help of geniuses like Carl Benjamin. How about that? Thank you.
We are now the second most popular party amongst 18 to 24-year-olds. And we've got lots of youngsters coming into the party, partly because of Carl, partly because of other YouTubers. And this has actually been a great success for us recently. And we actually have a very strong presence in social media, bearing in mind the size of the party compared to the other parties. So we're already doing well at that. The one thing that I would like to see is that each member of YI and each member of the party under 30 years old should be adopting someone who is retired and has time to get online, to use a smartphone and deliver a message every single day and train them to do it well so that actually the people who have the time to do it get out there and do it, and youngsters who presumably have careers and jobs in their 20s and 30s can take charge of that effort by older people in the party. So that's the future. We need to do a lot more of it. We're doing well, and we're going to do even better.
Okay, so Richard is quite right. The truth of the matter on this front is that when it comes to social media, as a party, we're actually not too bad at it. What we are bad at, and what I've touched on in the beginning, is that we're not good at engaging the right people. So YI have been mentioned. I mean, YI, the young people in that organisation have this skill set already. Not like me, who has to try and learn it really badly and then get it wrong. It's second nature to them. So we've got to engage our youth wing much more and utilise them as best we can. I would also say that UKIP as a party needs to employ the right people. We've made some real mistakes when it comes to media and social media in recent times, and I think that has to change. We have to look at this. But it's not just the only thing that we should look at. Social media forms a huge part of what we do, but the mainstream media is also something that we should concentrate on. And again, that's about getting the job roles and the people right instead of making so many mistakes like we always do. We need a very good combination to move forward.
And gentlemen, we now have the 5th out of 7 written questions from the London branches. If you lose, will you leave the party and/or will you set up your own party? And we shall start with Freddie, 1 minute each.
Contrary to any expectations, I'm not sweating here for any other reason than, unlike you lot, I wasn't born in a tropical country. The suggestion is preposterous. Of course, the answer is no, I wouldn't leave and set up another party. Do I look like Henry Bolton? This is ridiculous. Of course we didn't. I hope this is an answer which applies to my fellow candidates as well, and I imagine it does. I would analogize without being rude to them at all. It's about the sentiment, not the personalities. If I see myself as a potential fighter pilot back in 1941 with my Hurricane on the runway and the Junkers coming in the Fokkers, or the Fokkers coming. Oh, let's not go there. And this is Douglas Bader did it better. So, a small dog comes and bites my ankles. Am I going to flounce off in my open-top Rover and just say I'm not going to fight this? Ridiculous. Of course not. We stay over there. We kick the small dog away if needed, and we continue. We continue to fight. We continue to fight until we win. And win we shall. My grandmother, when I asked her when she was in her 80s, did you ever think, this is the time of the Blitz she's going back to, did you ever think we'd lose? And she said, don't be ridiculous. Of course, same applies. Thank you.
In 2017, at the conference, Anne-Marie Waters came second. She went off to her hotel, and I drove after and went to the hotel, and her entourage were there at the bar. And I spoke to her for probably 10 minutes, and she listened. And I tried to persuade her that if she put her shoulder to the yoke for the party and took on a role in the party and worked hard, in 6 months there'd probably be another leadership election, and she would then be in a very good position to come first instead of second, having demonstrated her commitment to the party and to the policies that you find in our manifesto. I feel like that about the party. I've voted for and served the party for a long time now, and I will continue to work with Freddie, Ben, all the other people in the party who do such good work. So I certainly will be staying in the party and continuing to work, including providing the software, some of the software that I've been talking about. The only thing I would say is it can be quite difficult to get projects through if you don't have the authority within the party. So that's one way to make sure that those projects happen, is to make me leader.
No problem with me as leader either.
So I stood in 2017 as a leadership candidate, and I think I'm one of the very few people that remains, actually. All the rest, like Liz said, have wandered off and started their own things. I'm still here. No, Marion hasn't. She's still here. But I'm still here, and I have no intention of going anywhere. Let's get one thing straight. UKIP, its constitution, the fight against the political establishment, they are all much bigger than me. And I believe in UKIP, and I'm going nowhere.
and gentlemen, we now have the 6th out of 7 questions in writing from the London branches. I'm going to slightly change the order. So it'll be Richard first, then Ben, then Freddie. And the question is, what damage have previous leaders inflicted upon the party? And how would you avoid doing this? Richard, 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Liz. Well, I think we all know about the terrible Henry Bolton era, and I did not vote for him. He came to our branch to talk to us, and I asked him the question, why do you want to be leader instead of chairman? But he was a disaster. We went to get rid of him. The NEC did a good job of voting to make sure that he was got rid of, and he was got rid of. People obviously talk about damage that Gerard has inflicted. I don't really believe that's as serious as people say. I think he's being scapegoated. I think that our electoral performance this year was going to happen. Ever since 2016, when Nigel essentially turned his back on the party, we've struggled because other parties are promising Brexit, and now we've got the Brexit party itself promising Brexit. I'm not convinced that it's going to deliver Brexit, but I think that our results have been primarily down to that issue. And if you look at some of the results we've had this year in local elections where people stood, we had, I was in Newcastle the other night with someone who got 41% for UKIP. The average, I think, across all wards was 16%, which is actually a good result. And in fact, if you look at our Euro elections, on a low turnout, over 500,000 people voted for us. With the Brexit party there, it wasn't as bad a performance as everybody wants you to think. We have a good future. If we keep working and we keep building it, we will get there.
I think you could look at every leader that we've had in recent times, and they've all done good things and they've all kind of done bad things. And I think they all have their own legacies. But like Freddie said in the beginning, I don't think there's much point in dwelling on where we are now and what's happened with other people. It's about now. The truth of the matter is that I am not big enough and ugly enough. Well, I may be ugly enough, but I'm not big enough to do this job on my own. And I'm going to make mistakes if I'm elected as your leader. However, I would hope that those mistakes aren't just mine, because I will be working with the NEC. I will be working with the membership, and I will always take every decision with the heaviest heart to try and do the right thing for the party and actually the electorate as a whole, because we want to start obviously resonating with them. So it's all about you guys. I want to carry you with me if I'm lucky enough to be elected leader, and then hopefully any decisions that we make together.
I'd be even sillier than I was if I said I was modelling myself after Colonel Jessup, was it? Colonel Nathan Jessup. A few good men. You want the truth? You can't handle the truth, that guy. But I think that might apply here. We've had a series of uncharismatic leaders. Unfortunately, a leader plays a really important part in a party because he's the front man. He's what gets across. He's the person or she who wins in the media. He's the gladiator in your in the arena. He's the one who has to anticipate what's coming, because the media are going to do him no favors whatsoever. They're going to try and put banana skins under his feet and banana skins under those banana skins. And under the whole pile of banana skins, there's probably a great big pit with snakes at the bottom. And that's when they like you. So you want a leader who can see that and still beat them. I am he. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now have the final 7th written question from the London branches. Should religion be involved in politics? So, Richard, Ben, Freddie, 1 minute.
Religion is involved in politics, and there's nothing you can do about it. The world, we face very serious threats, not just from the totalitarian EU, not just from the rebirth, the regrowth of socialist Marxism in the West. There is also the question of data being concentrated very heavily in the hands of a tiny number of people. But if we can't talk about the threat of international Islam and what it's doing to our world, then we are simply not facing up to the realities of politics in this country today. This is a country where a young soldier was killed in a beheading attempt in this very city. This is a country where in Manchester Arena, scores of teenage girls were blown to pieces by someone who was an Islamic violent madmen. If you don't face up to the reality of the growth of Islamic extremism, then it's coming for you. We must talk about it. We must talk about it more. We must understand why it happens. It must be spoken of.
So I think if I've understood the question correctly, what Richard said is right. You know, we should be there, and we should be talking about all of these difficult issues that we kind of face as a nation now. And obviously many of them are religious extremism, of which I have no time for with any religion. I know I got picked up for this the other day. But the truth is, I think the question is asking, is religion, should it be involved with politics? My answer would be no. I don't believe that religion should be intertwined with politics. I'd very much like to see the House of Lords abolished. I don't want to see hereditary peers and religious peers. I don't want to see any of that. Politics is politics, and the moment that you start to involve religion with it, and we've seen it in many other places, it becomes a really difficult place. So I'd like to see a non-political political environment.
Where we are right now and where we want to be are two different places. I would like to be in a world where religion and politics were kept separate, as has tried to be the case for 500 years in Western Europe. However, that is not where we are. In Islam, politics is completely indistinguishable. It's inextricably woven in with politics. The two are indistinguishable. There's no way to separate them. Islam is complete submission and a complete way of life. Now, we've got to remain in balance, though, at all times. More people are killed by cars in car accidents, far more than are killed by terrorists or Islamic terrorists in Britain. Now, there's not much we can do about the car ones. There's some things we can do about the others. But if we appear obsessed to the public about it, the public just close their ears and don't listen to us. We know we're right. We absolutely know we're right, but if the public isn't listening to us and we're at 0% or 1% in the polls, then we might as well not exist. Therefore, we have to move ourselves out of where we are and then dictate the agenda. It's not a question of whether or not we should do it. It's a question of priorities. You prioritize first what has to be done first. Play this smart, I know the game. I grew up as a white person in India because of what Islam did to my paternal forebears, and it wasn't pleasant, probably worse than you can imagine. So I need no lessons on this subject, I promise you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to play Beat the Clock. Now going to play a game. It's Beat the Clock. What's going to happen is all three candidates are going to dip their hand into Janice's bowl, and they're going to pull out 7 pieces of paper, and on 5 of those bits of paper there will be a topic. They have no idea what they're going to be asked. They have no idea what they're going to be asked, and then they will have 3 minutes to cover all the topics they pick. All the topics they pick, or they can just choose one or 2. So they are entirely free to choose which topics they're going to debate. Yes, Freddie?
Elizabeth, how do you know we're not cheating?
I know you wouldn't cheat, Freddie. I know what's on the list. So each candidate will be given 3 minutes to cover all their topics. They can discuss all of them, one of them, or a couple of them. We go down the line until it's done. So 3 minutes you will have. Then we'll break for 15 minutes and then consider the written questions from the group. Right. So you all have your 7 bits of paper. You all have your topics. You're all going to have 3 minutes each to cover all the topics, one of the topics, or whatever number you wish to discuss of your topics. And I'm going to randomly choose someone to start for 3 minutes. And that person is going to be Richard. Then it's going to be Freddie. Then it's going to be Ben. Richard, on your feet.
It isn't very fair on the first
anything simple. I'm going to try to talk to you about all of these subjects. Sorry. I'm going to try to talk to you about all these subjects. I'm trying to be very quick about them. One, the economy. We're coming out of the EU, hopefully. When we do, there's going to be a Brexit boom. I'm very excited about it. It's a time for opportunity. It's a time for deregulation. It's a time for businesses, especially small businesses, to really drive the UK economy, increase our trade with the world, and it's an exciting time. So I'm looking forward to that. We need to make sure that getting out of the EU really does mean deregulation. Two, HS2. HS2 is a phenomenal waste of money. We know that Andrew Adonis was very much involved in making sure the programme went ahead, but also the EU's own programme for building high-speed railway all around Europe. I often wonder if that wasn't put in place in the sense of the Roman Empire's road system. It's really for getting the soldiers to places where they needed to put down rebellion for the EU army. And it's a terrible waste of money. I know that Nick Hurd, who I stood against in the 2017 general election, promised, he actually resigned the whip so that he could go against HS2, get re-elected, and as soon as he was re-elected, he then supported again. Typical Tory, utterly untrustworthy. HS2 is a disaster. It should be stopped. Cycle lanes. Cycle lanes have been, I think, a disaster. I approve of cycling. We need to have much more cycling. Cycling is great, but cycle lanes actually aren't really helping. A lot of the time they're empty, and they're causing vast congestion in London, on London's roads, which is leading to a lot of soot and very bad air. So cycle lanes have been a failure. Boris bikes have been a success, but cycle lanes are a failure. Education. What can I say? The UKIP's policy on education is that we actually make people studying STEM subjects not pay any tuition fees. I think that's a great idea. We need many more people to do scientific and technical education. We also need to have technical schools so that people who aren't academic actually have a proper vocation and training and can get employment more easily afterwards. Vote rigging. We know from Lutfer Rahman in Tower Hamlets that there's been a lot of it. Our postal vote system is utterly broken and it's being abused on a huge scale. And something needs to be done about that. There's an argument for having people go into a polling booth and dip their finger in an inkwell, so the only way they can vote a second time is to chop their finger off. The sixth subject, BBC. We all love the BBC, don't we? We've got UKIP has the perfect policy on the BBC. Make the license fee voluntary, and then we'll find out if the BBC can actually survive in a commercial environment. I think that you find the BBC thinning down quite a lot. And many of the people who work there can go on and do something useful instead of being involved in the production of Marxist propaganda that we're all sick of seeing and nobody watches. I actually sold my television to a man who came up to me at a garage in a white van and said, "Do you want to buy a telly?" And I said, "No, I hate telly. Do you want to buy a telly?" And he followed me home, came into my house and took the telly. And when I helped him carry the telly off the premises, he looked me, I looked him in the eye and I said, "It's not often the proprietor helps you carry the goods off the premises, is it?" He hasn't been back yet, luckily. Finally, Greenbelt. We know that immigration out of control is putting huge pressure on the Greenbelt. It's a disaster to build on our Greenbelt. We need to preserve this beautiful country and its beautiful countryside. And there is so much empty space that is brown belt. There's so many buildings that aren't being used. There are so many houses in dormitory suburbs like where I live that people have bought just as an investment to get their dirty money out of Syria or Libya or wherever it is, or all over the world. And those buildings are not being used properly. So we need to stop that as well. That is also in our manifesto, a very good policy.
I kick off with foreign aid. It's ridiculous what we're giving, 0.7% of our entire GDP. That's completely nonsensical. Foreign aid is there for the purpose for helping, not for propping up bad governments or rewarding regimes who shouldn't be rewarded. Most of the money ends up in Swiss bank accounts anyway. It's a complete ridiculous position. And we are backing transsexual gay bans, for whatever reason, in Nigeria. That's what our foreign aid is used to buying. Probably that money doesn't end up in Swiss bank accounts. It, however, probably ends up the noses of the people doing it. This is just ridiculous. Further, we're borrowing the money from the banks in countries to which we're giving aid to. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. The whole thing is like comedy, which leads me to the next thing, which is very sensible, which is police, which is another part of the comedy. The police now do not do what police are supposed to do. Police are supposed to catch criminals, to catch bad guys, not to harass people like you and I for talking our minds, for being frank and sincere in what we're saying, for talking about things which are not only true, but demonstrably true and provably true, but the police would still come and harass you. In London, 900 policemen have been diverted from frontline duties into policing hurt feelings on the internet. That's in London alone. That is the Metropolitan Police, which is utterly outrageous, and we've got to stop it. We can't have that anymore. Now, this moves on naturally to prisons, not because the police should be in prisons, but a few of them should be in prison, but the prisons which are absolutely overflowing with people who are training each other in how to commit crimes. That is just not on. They have become universities of crimes. This is also, they have become universities of fundamentalism, where people are being converted to a certain ideology that is perhaps at odds with us, and into radical elements of that ideology, which certainly is not acceptable to us. All of this is going on with our blessings and at our expense. This is called a self-destructive cycle in society, and if we don't break out of it right now, we never can, because there's only one way this is heading up, and that is with the UK disappearing down the gutter, and that's going to happen over my dead body. So, we move on next to the sex education in schools. Yes, some of it is necessary. Like most things, moderation is sensible. Like immigration too. Immigration is like water. Without it, you die of thirst. Too much, you drown. We're well into the drowning right now. Sex education in schools has to be done, but not to the extent it's being now. Right now, let the kids have their childhood, for heaven's sake. Give them when they're... No, don't clap. You're not stealing my time. So, 6 or 7-year-olds are being taught about 43 types of gender equality or some nonsense like this. All of this is preposterous. I was a teacher. You teach them the 3 R's, and if they can't spell, then tell them there's an A in front of one of them, because it is arithmetic. The other two are rather more complicated as well. None of this nonsense about talking about sex all the time and so on. It's just ridiculous. Let them be children. I speak as a father, though not as prolific as my two people here, but my daughter is like her father, and therefore she makes up for 4 or 5. So, and she rules me entirely and doesn't put up with any of my nonsense. Far braver than you lot. So, we move on to face coverings over there. Now, with a face like mine, you can understand the need for coverings. And, however, this is not what we're talking about. Of course, we've got to allow it. We can't mandate against face coverings, but what we can do is try and educate them not to be so foolish and to die of vitamin D shortage. And then we move on to freedom of speech. Well, that's what I exercise, and God help anyone who tries to stop me doing it. The last one is the Brexit Party. Well, they're a bunch of rascals and liars, and we've beat them. Now I'll tell you what I really think.
Okay, I'll try to answer these as shortly as I can. I won't get so excited, hopefully. Right, first one, Heathrow expansion. I'm technically not against it. I mean, I'm a classical libertarian. I want a free market. I want our economy to grow. However, when it comes to Heathrow, I'm happy to be led by the members. They will know much better than I. Knife and gun crime, huge problem, and I do believe that we need more police on our streets. I think that goes without saying. What I would like to see is our deterrent of the prison being much better than it currently is. So I want a system whereby you pack up your dignity and your rights in a bag when you go inside, and it's a place where you can't go on a PlayStation. You can't create gangs and you know, sort of think about terror that you're going to enact on people. I want it to be a place that's absolutely horrific for people to go, and that's what I'd like to see with that. And hopefully, once it is, that will change people's opinion about carrying knives and guns. The NHS, well, having just used that, it is absolutely brilliant, and I think UKIP should be fully supportive of it. But I do believe that we should be saying things like, we don't want to see health tourism, we don't want to see loads of middle managers who are just doing not much, we want to see frontline staff getting the support and the funds that they really need. But UKIP has to be the party of the NHS. International intervention. So, having served in the armed services in the Royal Navy and having partaken in one war and supported another, I'm not a big fan of this. I've got to be honest. I've had to put everything on the line, and my family did, to carry out the bidding of our government. And the truth is, if it's right, then that's fine. If there are real problems and it will be beneficial for us to intervene, then that's great. But half the time, it's governed by politics in the background, brown envelopes, and oil, and that's not good enough. Putting people's, their lives at risk for that. So the legalization of drugs, again, I'll come back to the Navy. I've never done any drugs apart from alcohol quite a lot. But the truth is I haven't done it, so I don't really know what it's like. However, I am open to this argument, and I think it is an argument that we have to have. Because we now currently see a very slow move with the cannabis oil being sold in mainstream shops. There is a move towards the legalization of drugs. I currently don't agree with it, but I think there is a debate to be had. So the benefit system, okay, we're all going to agree on this one. It's abused. It should be there as a safety net only. It should not be there as a lifeline for people. We want to help people when they've hit rock bottom. We want to try and get them out of that, but we can't support people and their families on a benefit system which is kind of broken. Climate change. So, climate change, we need to calm down about. We know that the way that we affect that is so small as a country. Climate change is happening, but let's be serious about it. Let's have a proper debate. Let's not block motorways and glue ourselves in baths and people dying trying to get to the hospital. You know, we've got to be sensible about this. Talk about climate change in a reasoned way. It's certainly not as bad as people think.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to enjoy a 15-minute break. Would you please be kind enough to buy some drinks at the bar in order to encourage this pub? And also, would you please, if you want to, hand in your written question, one line only, to Janice and pop it in her bowl. Many thanks. See you in 15 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, we shall now start with the 7 questions from the floor. These are one-liners chosen to be presented to each leadership candidate. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question, and we shall go down the line in a variety of different mathematical formulae, thanks to one Andy Beckman. We shall start. The first question is: what steps would you take to protect the party and country from transnational Silicon Valley-based companies like Twitter, Facebook, from interfering in our politics? And the order will be, this time, Ben, Richard, Freddie. Ben, 1 minute.
I think this is a really difficult problem for anybody facing this kind of, as a political party, if you like. As a party, and personally, we are a party of free speech. We want personal freedoms and all of that jive. And the trouble is now there are big corporations which are sort of piling down on that and you know, taking data which we don't even know about, you know, using you as some sort of marketing tool. It's massive. And it's just about data collection. And I think as a party, we've got to be the party that talks up for the people that kind of don't talk up. We've got to be the party of free speech. And we've got to try and challenge this problem where multinational corporations are essentially stealing data from us. We have to take that fight to them and we have to talk about it. And I think pretty much that's the only thing that we can do, is we should raise it as one of our main policies and talk about it.
We suffer now from what I'd term data tyranny. Every single one of us, the state knows we're here. We've all got our phones in our pockets. We're tracked with cookies. We're tracked with every kind of tracking mechanism online. Every single thing we do is monitored. We all know from Edward Snowden's revelations that really everything that we do can be seen. And this is a huge change in the way our society operates. This simply didn't exist 30 years ago. The party needs to put forward the idea of a bill of digital rights. One of the problems that we have is something called data re-identification. It is legal to sell that data, vast quantities of it, supermarket cards, every kind of data collection you can imagine. And it's legal to sell that data if you anonymize it, if you take off the names and addresses. In fact, there are firms, the specialists in this are mostly in Atlanta in Georgia, and what they do is something called data re-identification, where they put the names back on with a 99% accuracy. So we are all being spied on. We need to make sure that people have the right to be forgotten. There is some law on that, but we need more. And if necessary, we need people to be paid for the use of their data. But a digital bill of rights is the answer.
There are 3 or 4 aspects to this. 2 of them have already been covered by the previous candidates. Another one is censorship. They are actually influencing, not just stealing our data, they're telling us what we are allowed to think and say. That is totally intolerable. Now, the problem here is we have, because of problems in encryption, matters in which I am an expert, and all sorts of things related to it, we don't even know what they know. There's no way of us finding what we know, and it's probably very, very sensible to assume they know pretty much everything. They know ladies are pregnant before the lady has had the pregnancy test, simply because of what food she orders. They know all sorts of things about us. It's what use they have for it. I'm here extremely paranoid. I assume they will misuse all data they've got, because they're absolute scoundrels. They cannot be trusted. They have globalist agendas, generally left-wing. I don't know why the left doesn't work, you see. Socialism is just like a mental illness in the elderly. In the young, it's a measure of their optimism and friendliness towards the world. But as you get older, you realize they're just nuts. Now, how do we actually do it? This legislation is very, very difficult, if only if it was as easy as Richard said, because how do we track what they're doing? Under heavy encryption, which can never be broken, nonetheless, by giving them swinging penalties without any time lapse on it. So eventually, if 50 years later we find that we're doing, we bankrupt them.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have the second question from the floor. UKIP members have been slandered and defamed as being far-right and racist. How would you connect with a voter from a BAME background? And we shall now go Freddie, Ben, Richard. 1 minute each.
I approach all voters the same way. They want the same things. It's the politics of bread, it used to be called. All voters want the same things. They want to be happy. They have children. They want them to be raised safely. They want safety, happiness, economic wealth. It's the economy, stupid, is not the only things. All the inner things about feeling like they belong and so on in a mutually inclusive society where Britishness is defined not by skin reflectance, but is defined by values, all the things that you cannot see. Therefore, I would not adopt any different approach approaching anyone. Long ago, Islam TV did an interview with me, the first and last they ever did, because I was asked, in exactly this tone, why would a Muslim vote for your party? With that accent. And I said, for all the reasons I just gave. And then at the end of it, I said, why on earth wouldn't he? Are you a racist, sir? This is to the interviewer, and in which case the cameraman started laughing. Of course, it was not broadcast. We are appealing on grounds not of left or right, not of this religion or that religion, but on right and wrong. Simple as that. And it always works. We keep on doing the right thing for the right reasons. People see our sincerity and that we're none of these ridiculous things. And I'm happy to be on the far right if tinily to the left of me is somebody like Joe Stalin, because that's what it is. Far right just means lefties lost the argument.
Those kind of phrases and words have been used against us for as long as I can remember. So, I joined UKIP in 2011, and I was called that many times by people that were, they opposed us. And that's fine. I'm kind of upset a little bit by the fact that those words kind of don't mean anything now because they've been used so much. And I think that's quite upsetting, actually. But the truth is, it's like I said earlier, we need someone at the front of the ship who can resonate with the general public. It doesn't matter what colour, sexuality, religion you are. It just doesn't matter. If you believe in what we do as a party, then get on board. Why not? We're all fighting for the right things. So I think the problem we've had recently is because although we do fight for the right things, we've concentrated on one section of policy. By hook or by crook, we've ended up there. And we need to make sure that we're part of a broad policy and we're talking about everything that matters to everybody.
Far right has become code for working class people and working class culture and concerns, and that's got to stop. It's in the mainstream media. We need to bang this drum and get on the media and point out their prejudices. Nigel Farage called UKIP members on March 29th tattooed thugs. or tattooed up to our eyeballs, I think. Whether someone's got a tattoo or not should make no difference to your perception of their political outlook. When it comes to the issue of immigrants, the people who are often at the lowest rung of the ladder in terms of income in this country are very often immigrants. They are the people who suffer most from the excessive immigration into this country. And it is surprising when you talk to immigrants how they do understand this and they know this. And there are many immigrants in this country who reckon that we have too much immigration. So we need to get out and talk to them and help and get them to help us make the case that immigration isn't about skin color. The problem is too many people coming in. The solution ultimately is integration, not balkanization. We need to actually have some kind of consistent society, a consistent society where people agree with each other and it's nothing to do with with the color of your skin.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now have the third question from the floor. And the order is going to be Richard, Freddie, Ben. 1 minute each. Are you a spender or a saver? Can you be responsible with the party's money and with public money if you were elected?
I'm a saver, and I'm going to save the party a lot of money. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that we don't deliver vast numbers of leaflets to people who vote Labour or who support Antifa or people who simply hate us. And the way we do that, of course, is canvassing. We need to find out where our supporters really are, and we need to communicate better with those who do support us and grow our support that way. But I'm also going to save the party lots of money because I build software. I've already written canvassing software that we've used. I'm going to build software to help people make the right leaflets, better leaflets, so that the uptake for those leaflets is 3% instead of 1%. And that saves you a vast amount of money. So much money is wasted by all of us on leaflets that are ineffective. We need to do that much better. There's going to be a library of leaflets on the party website. There's going to be a leaflet system where you can build leaflets, and the canvassing system will help you make sure they go to the right people. That's going to save a lot of money, and we're going to actually manage to fight elections much more effectively on a lower budget.
The repository of leaflets would be exactly the same with me. I have designed more than 500 graphics for UKIP over the last 5.5 years, which have been widely distributed, and all of them are free of any copyright of mine, at least. Sometimes there are adaptations of other people's works, in which case any copyright might be the other person's. However, this is not the central issue. I have been running businesses since I was 15 years of age. I am now 61. That means I've had 46 years of running businesses. I have documented them in my CV in great and sometimes painful detail, because they were, and that is the brief version that you have, I promise you. There is a sense of humor behind. The unexpurgated one is available for me by email only, because I love paper to stay as trees. Now, there is this is of extreme importance. You must not be naive in these matters. You must look beyond the surface into what is reality. What is reality? Trust people to run what is in fact a big business for somebody who has kept on running very big businesses with turnovers in the tens and in fact nearly 100 million euros a year. I have done so, and I've done so without anyone ever losing any money. Certainly not myself. Thank you.
There's a few levels to answer this question for you. So when it comes to the party, I would be a saver, and I think working alongside Gerard, in fact, and Liz on the NEC, we've done loads of work to try and make the party much more frugal and streamlined, and that's a good thing. I think as a dad, I'm probably a spender. But personally, I'm probably a saver. And I think that what we've got to do now, we can talk about leaflets and everything, but as a party, we've got to move forward in the most productive way that we can. But we mustn't be against spending, but we've got to spend in the right areas and make sure that they're actually going to deliver for us. So like websites, so like social media, those sorts of things, we do need to spend. But it's got to be done right, and it's got to be clever. It's time that we now start to think outside the box, and we think how we're going to actually succeed and really make a difference when it comes to elections by spending correctly and not badly.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now have the fourth question from the floor. I'm going to present it now to our candidates. If you won, what would you do on your first day? And the running order is going to be Ben, Freddie, Richard. Ben, 1 minute.
Wow, first day. Okay, I'm probably going to have to go home and explain to my partner I actually won and say, right, here we go. And the fact is, I think then it's just a case of the first thing we need to do is meet with the NEC and although we don't have many, but the spokes and all that sort of thing. We have to try and come together with what we have at the moment, and then with all the key players that are currently in the party, we start to devise a way forward. Like I said earlier, there's no right or wrong answer in moving forward, and with this question, to move forward, we're going to have to do this together. We have to do it as a team. And I think even with the leadership candidates, we've got to all come together. So I think the very first things that I would do is try to start to unify people, work together, get a plan, and get it out.
When I win, I've already done the thinking that needs to be done, because it's a lot more than 1 day of thinking before the first day of action. Lack of thinking has got us largely to where we are. Not bad people, not insincere people, not people who are our enemies. We have had them in UKIP, but by and large they've gone. The game's not worth the candle for them anymore. They think they've won. They think they've crushed us, and we bloody well wrong. They haven't, because we are going to research. But that thinking and that planning I have already done. We have an exceptional treasurer who thankfully is not an accountant. He will have a surfeit of accountants, a flange of accountants. That is the collective noun for baboons. I am an accountant myself, so I'm allowed to say that. Now, I have already liaised with him. The main problem is keeping us solvent, and more than solvent, having a fighting fund, because we might be fighting a general election. Terrifying thought that may be in the next 6 months. I have the plan for that. Give me the tools, which is your vote. I'll finish the job.
The first thing I'm going to do if I'm elected, please do elect me, is I'm going to get on the telephone to our erstwhile leader, Gerard Batten, and say, congratulations, thank you for promising to be my deputy leader, and I know that I can call on you and your expertise and your experience and your wisdom. He will be the first person I speak to. The second person will be the person that I appoint as a head of HR. And that person's job is going to be to make sure that the talented people in the party who are willing to do work for the party with their skills and experience are put in the right teams so that they can come forward and actually straight away start to do the things that we need to do to get back up in the polls and in elections. I'm going to be on the telephone, and I'm going to speak to as many members as possible. Obviously, especially people that are going to be on teams. I'm going to speak to Steve Beattie, who runs an extremely successful merchandising operation, and he has plans to make UKIP money by having a UKIP shop that is way, way bigger and better than the one we have, selling things that are not just UKIP branded. And then the next thing I'm going to do is sort out the software team, and we've got Anthony Harry here who helps me with software, and it's fantastic. So those teams are going to come into place straight away and get working.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now have the fifth question from the floor. Do you support an English Parliament, English votes for English issues, or do you want to do away with devolution? 1 minute and we shall go. Freddie, Richard, Ben.
Excellent question. Right. The question itself has a flaw in it. It's a false dichotomy. Of course, we want devolution in terms of local power to local people. But things like Scottish Parliament, Welsh Assembly, they're too high up. They're just another big layer between our Parliament and the people. We don't need more layers of government. We need local government. That should continue. More power to local government. People who live on the street are the best people to tell you what's wrong on the street and what's right on the street, not somebody higher up in some building that costs 700 or 800 million pounds. What we need to do is not get another English Parliament. That's just more jobs for the boys and just another layer. Just what I did in London. I just got rid of the middle layers of management because they're never any good. Me, as a business person, I know that. Cut in the middle. People are the resource, not layers, not committees, not all of the things that have seemed to have come out of Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister. They are proscriptions, not prescriptions, just a bit like 1984. So what I would do is get rid of all these Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Assembly and all of that stuff, whether they like it or not. We hold the purse strings in England, and if they don't like it, they can lump it. So we don't need an English Parliament. We don't need that lot, using up our money and wasting it. Thank you.
We had this question in Scotland a couple of days ago, so it was interesting to deal with this question. Here's a leaflet for the Brecon by-election that's taking place at the moment, and one of the items that we're promising there is to scrap the Assembly, because there are a lot of Welsh people who are very unhappy with their terrible Labour-governed Assembly. So the Welsh people voted 50.3% in favour of a Parliament, of an Assembly, and obviously 49.37% against. So and of course, these extra parliaments were put in by the Blair government, and they're part of the EU project to dismantle the UK, and they're being quite effective at doing that. But it's important to let the people in those countries decide whether they wish to continue their parliaments. So I would say let each nation within the United Kingdom have a referendum on whether it wishes to continue its own assembly or parliament, and let them decide. And I think we may be surprised. We may find that they wish to get rid of them, and one by one, hopefully, they will disappear. And those countries will be very well represented in Westminster, as they already are, especially if Westminster does a better job in the future.
So I would say no to an English Parliament. I would agree with Richard, and I would say yes to a referendum in Wales and one in Scotland. I believe in grassroots, so I want more power to councillors. I want people to own their politics locally. I would say no to the House of Lords. I would much rather see a much smaller, just a chamber of scrutiny or a committee of scrutiny, but not something that costs loads of money to the taxpayer and something that can derail the government's business. So I think what I want is less government and more power to people.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now have the sixth question from the floor. UKIP gave us Brexit. Through lack of wisdom, could UKIP be the party that prevents Brexit happening by splitting the vote? 1 minute each, and that will be Freddie, Richard, Ben. 1 minute each.
Currently, where we are in the polls, it's just nonsense. We're not splitting the vote. We're not costing anyone anything. But what happens if we got into the grey area, where we get 3-4% again, and therefore we are supposedly taking votes away from the Brexit party, assuming it still exists, which is not definite. I would hope that they just disband, but we prepare not for what we hope for, but what we think might happen. So if there's a Brexit party there, we're back at 3-4-5% in the polls. Should we stand because we're taking votes to them, or should we just say, let's lie down? Well, of course the answer is no to that. That's ridiculous. We can't trust them. They might disappear. A new bit of skirt or something might arrive in the right place. The spring is going to be in the air again in about 6 months' time. Who knows what other distractions will occur? And we will have a charismatic leader who will simply be off somewhere else. And without him, the whole thing will collapse, unless you can think that a certain rather short lady, vertically challenged, is the way it's going to take over. Because if she does, there'll be all sorts of things happening in this country, which will be rioting on the streets if Ms. Widdicombe takes over in terms of setting policies. Nigel at least knows when to keep his mouth shut. So, of course, we've got to stand. To hell with it. We have to take the long-term view.
We've got the wonderful Stuart Agnew here today. Many of you will know him. And he witnessed a few months ago Nigel Farage in the European Parliament arguing for an extension to Article 50. Now, you would think that a man who'd spent all those years trying to get us out of the EU wouldn't argue to keep us in, but he did in an in-camera session in the European Parliament. So the question is, are we going to stop Brexit? I agree with what Freddie says. At the moment, we're not getting enough votes for it to be an issue, in fact. But in the future, will it be? Well, hopefully on October the 31st, we'll see some kind of Brexit delivered. I don't have great hopes for that, but certainly there's a chance of it. And after Brexit, don't forget that Nick Clegg and all those people are going to continue campaigning to take us back into the EU. And so we need to be a party that is still on the ballot papers and is still functioning successfully so that people can express that pro-Brexit vote even when the Brexit party gets fully subsumed by the Tory party and becomes actually the anti-Brexit party, just as the independent group is the anti-independence group.
The problem that we have at the moment is that politics is so up in the air, we don't know what's going to happen from 1 minute to the next. The truth, or my opinion about the Brexit Party, is the clue is in the name. It's the Brexit Party, and I think if in October Boris makes Brexit happen, and let's all hope that he does, he's going to cut them off at the knees. Let's be honest about that. But he might not, and you know, it might change, so we don't know. But the truth is, like I said earlier, we have to be honest about ourselves now. We are always going to be the original party of Brexit. Always, you cannot take that away from us, and it should always be a really strong platform that we stand on. However, now, UKIP has to be the party of post-Brexit. We are going to out-Nigel by coming up with policies of which he can't because all of his members cannot agree on them. We are going to have a live manifesto. We are going to have policies that we can sell to people. And that's the only way that we're going to resurge again and be back. And then we are going to be at the realms of 10, 8, 12, 14, 15% again. Because that's where we've got to be. And we don't back down for any man.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now have the final 7th question from the floor. 1 minute each, and it's going to be, Richard, Ben, Freddie, should the NEC be abolished?
The answer is absolutely not. We need to have an NEC, but the problem is a structural problem. What we actually need is we need a board of proper professional directors who actually have the job, as in any company, of oversight over the party, particularly the party's finances and how it is run in that sense. But we also need to have an elected NEC which deals with the party's workings, the politics, and the members and all of that. So discipline, you name it. If you have two groups like that, then their particular roles will be separated. And one of the problems that we have with the NEC, arguably, is that some of the people, obviously NEC members present accepted, but some of the people have been elected by the members who don't even know them. Sometimes there are 90 NEC members on the ballot, so we need to know them better. We could possibly look at a regional NEC as long as there is proportionate representation of the regional members on it. So that's what's required, a separation of the NEC and a board.
Okay, so difficult for me as I am a serving member of the NEC. However, I do believe that we do need an NEC, like Richard. We have to have a body that is responsible and oversees the day-to-day running of the party alongside its paid officers. And that's elected by the membership. Now, I don't believe that the situation or the structure is correct and right. I think it does need tweaking, and I think it needs to be changed, and we need to update that. But it's one of the things that makes us different from many other political parties. We have an NEC that's elected by its members, and that's really important. But I do believe that it's got to be, altered for 2019 and onwards. One thing I would say is that the NEC do make some very difficult decisions sometimes, and the communication down to the membership isn't always straightforward, and it can't be in some respects. When it comes to the Gerrard issue, I mean, I've been accused of voting against Gerrard. I would much rather have stood against Gerrard. No disrespect, Richard. But I would. And the thing is, I was never party to any of those discussions or votes. So the NEC does carry out a very important job.
Our NEC is a jolly sight better than that of the Brexit Party. That's what we play to our strengths, mate. It's democratic. Just because it makes decisions occasionally which we either don't understand or don't like doesn't mean it's wrong. It's half of them are the same people who got rid of Bolton and sat for it. I'm not being partisan in this. I'm disappointed all this has happened. But this is just facts, mate. As to splitting it into keeping... Currently, the issue which Richard did touch on, you can't make a speech here at Hustings and then you get the ideas nicked in the next one, is, of course, the directorships. The directorships are key because a company must have directors. Having this other than a company structure is just not on. I can talk to you at any great length about this after the Hustings. It's too complex a matter to be at a time. But trying to create two classes, a director class and an NEC class. The NEC have clout because they are directors. So there is the natural contradiction in what has just been suggested there. I think we'd largely stick with it and maybe have some regional representation. Otherwise, you keep on voting for people you don't know on the basis of who's got the nicest face, and perhaps if there's some of them should wear burqas. Thank you. Me first.
Ladies and gentlemen, as I stated earlier, the chairwoman reserves the right to ask the wild card question. I'm going to ask a wild card question now to all three candidates. They only have half a minute to respond. So, we are aware that a leader needs vision, a leader needs energy, but we have Bojo and his mojo. We have the heavenly Jeremy. So, we need to see some charisma from you three, and I want all of you, one by one, to show me your X factor. Starting with Freddie, Ben, and Richard. Half a minute.
I don't have an off switch for it, mate. I sleep 4.5 hours a night. If I sleep a bit longer, then I'm not in form. If I sleep even 4 hours and 40 minutes, then I'm definitely not going to be firing. 4 minutes, 30 seconds, that would be enough, but it is 4 hours and 30 minutes. Just don't get too worried. No, I have charisma. It pours out of me all the time. I enjoy a battle. And though it is a great surprise to my many friends in London, I'm a man of few words, but I choose them exceedingly careful. And if you think I'm repeating myself, it's simply because you didn't hear me right the first time. Thank you.
So not sure how I follow that unless I start jumping up and sweating and all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to do that. The truth is, I believe that I am someone who can relate and resonate with a vast swathe of the public. And that's what we need to do now. We need to become relevant again. And I believe that I'm the sort of person that's going to be able to do that. I'm ex-Navy. I'm a family man. I run my own business. I've been a local councillor, a mayor, you name it. Locally, I've done it. And I think that's where we need to be as a party. And if you vote for me, that's exactly what you're going to get.
I'm not going to be shouty, ranty, all right? I answer calmly. I deal with the question. I listen carefully to it. If people have got a tough question for me, I stand up to it and I will not retreat. I will hold our ground. I will hold the ground of the manifesto. I have been present from the beginning of every single one of the hustings so far. On Saturday, I drove up to Glasgow and back again in the same day and performed at the hustings. I've got the energy to deliver what's required to lead the party.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're now coming on to the expert topic, and what's going to happen is each leadership candidate is going to pull up a chair. They're going to be about a foot away from this rug, and they're going to address you for 2 solid minutes on their expert subject. Now, as Mike Hookham is not present today, I'm going to read out his expert subject. So I'll begin as Mike Hookham. I have been lucky during my political career to become an expert in several policy areas, including defence and UK fishing. However, as a former commando engineer, veteran affairs are very close to my heart. 2 years ago, I embarked on a journey that was to reinforce why I became an active politician. In conjunction with the Daily Express, I created a project to combat veteran homelessness and to make the Armed Forces Covenant fit for purpose. This project culminated in spending 3 nights sleeping on the streets, experiencing firsthand the issues homeless veterans face nightly. If you're interested, please watch the Walking in Their Shoes documentary on my social media. First night out, on the south bank of the Thames, we found a homeless veteran trying to make a few pounds selling postcards. This man, a former Royal Marine and Afghanistan veteran, had severe post-traumatic stress disorder. He was self-medicating with alcohol and still had shrapnel embedded in his body. Luckily, I had within my team an expert on housing the homeless veterans who took this man's case in hand. But the experience reminded me exactly why I entered politics. It reminded me what we as politicians and as a political party should always be trying to achieve. We must speak and act for those who cannot do so themselves, especially those who have risked all to defend our way of life. We should seek a better life for everyone in our country, never resting on our laurels and always looking to improve our society. It is this type of profound experience that will guide me in bringing our party back to common sense leadership, acting as both a guide and my inspiration. And that is Mike Hookham's expert speech. So now we're going to have 2 minutes expert speech, and we'll start with Richard, Ben, Freddie.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I can, as a married man of many years, I can tell you that being married, is absolutely the best thing that has ever happened to my wife. I met a war reporter, photographer, many years ago called, I think it was called McHugh, and he had a big hole in his back because he'd been shot in Afghanistan when he was out with a platoon, and he very nearly died. And he went back to Afghanistan a couple of years later. He was a married man as well. And he said that he couldn't photograph weddings. He'd done it once, and it was much too scary and frightening because brides and mothers-in-law are far less forgiving than the Taliban. I have, for my sins, photographed weddings, and I've dealt with that on many occasions, and it is quite a tough process. My wife, who is so wonderful, when I was first with her, dumped me. And about 2 weeks later, I took her to a smart restaurant, and I got down on one knee. I dropped my napkin and had to pick it up. But I got down on one knee and proposed to her. And she looked at the ring for a day or two and then gave it back and then gave it back to me. I had to go round to every single jeweler on Hatton Garden because I knew that she would, I thought very likely, 1% probably, that she would say yes. So I spent the whole day in the rain, and I went into a little jeweler's and I said, listen, I need to buy a ring, but it's probably going to be returned. Is there any way we can come to an agreement? And the chap, and finally at 5:25, this old jeweler said, well, no, sorry. And then his wife just poked her head out from behind the counter, and she said, darling, can we have a little word? And he went round the back, and then they both came out a minute later, and they said, we'll do you a deal. If you come back within a week, we'll give you 90% of the value of the ring. So luckily, I did get my 90% back. All I could say is I was very persistent. A year later, in the wilderness, after a year in the wilderness, we were back together. 7 years later, we married. We've now been married 12 years, and my wife makes it possible for me to stand here today.
I can't follow the whole marriage thing because actually I'm not an expert in relationships and marriages. I'm really bad at that, so I'm not going to talk about those. I'll park that. The truth is, I could be an expert in defence. You know, I'm a veteran myself. I could be an expert in grassroots, in local government. I'm not going to talk about that either. What I am going to talk about is what I'm trying to do. If you look at my website, I'm the only person who has a Go Grassroots manifesto. Now, what makes that difference and what makes me an expert in that front is it wasn't written by me. It was written by the membership because I listen. I want the membership to come with me. I want to carry you. Another policy, if you like, would be I would like as UKIP as a party going forward, that we campaign on revoking the rights of rapists in grooming gangs, the parental rights. I want them to be gone. Now, I believe in that, but the reason I'm talking about it is because I've listened. That was the members that told me that. Another thing, I would like to see a full audit of all the mosques that exist within this country. And the reason I want to do that is because the members told me that was the right thing to do. They believe that the money coming from Saudi Arabia and funding extremism in the mosques on our streets, that needs to stop, and we need to look at it. Now, I believe in that, but like I say, I listened. The members told me that. And that's what you're going to get with me. My only real talent, if you like, is I will listen. And I will engage people because, like I've said before, and I keep saying it, I cannot do this on my own. The only way we can do this moving forward is all of us, as a party with everybody, focusing on people's expertise and their experiences in certain areas, which is why, again, I'm the only candidate who is saying I want to scrap having high-ranking UKIP officials as the spokespeople. I want the members to do it. I want the members to do it because if they've got experience in a sector or in a certain trade, that's who I want to carry with me. And that is the sort of person that I want speaking for us on the main stage. Thank you.
For my sins, I'm a scientist. I trained in physics, which is the science that answers the question why, which is the most important question of all. I'm also a mathematician, which tries to find out the truth about everything. These are both quantitative in nature. But I don't think these are the qualities which are most important for me facing leadership of UKIP. They are important, though. They enable me to answer the sort of questions that often confound candidates of other parties, leaders of other parties, when they're trying to explain their own points of view, and they get everything muddled and wrong. And in a debate, it's very good. I can go in there and create a lot of mischief and point out that they just got it completely. I'm not allowed to say arse over tit, but I think that's sort of acceptable. So that, however, is not the main and the most important thing. The most important thing is about heart and emotion and what's in it, because these are things which come across, and they come across with sincerity that is not fake. It cannot fool people if it was fake. Mine is not. When I was driving on the very first Hustings was in the southwest, in Tiverton and Devon, and I had come from Thanet. And it was just fortuitous in one way, because as I was driving through the lovely, Somerset actually, the sun was at just the right angle coming through the trees and so on, and I suddenly realized I was crying. It's not something I do that often. I've been through hard knocks in life. We're men, we sort of bottle it up a bit. But this was just crying because it was reminding me. I'm an agnostic, so this was not God speaking to me, but maybe if those of you who have the gift of faith might think it was God. It was telling me, that's what you're fighting for. This was Jerusalem. This is the thing which we want to preserve. And it's not defined in any particular way, but I just know that we have to fight. I pulled over the car because it'd be irresponsible not to do so. Had a sniffle, maybe, and then got back on the road and was only 10 minutes late for the Hustings, or maybe 20. But it was worth it because it did remind me. With me, you get the scientist, you get the analytical ability, but you also get the heart. Thank you.
Now we're going to come to the rapid fire question stage of the day. What's going to happen is the candidates are now all going to stand in front of you about, I don't know, half a foot from the rug. If you'd all get up, please, and stand in front of your audience. And you are going to field questions to them, but via me, and they're going to have to be short fire, snappy, quick questions. They will have 30 seconds only to respond, and we are going to do it so they'll get about 3 questions per candidate. So who wants to go for? What question would you like to ask?
How are the candidates going to address the present problem of 5G?
5G, that's enough. That's quick enough. 5G, Ben.
Wow, that's a huge question to try and answer in 30 seconds, and I don't even know that I can. But I think that we should fight for it, and I think we should speak up against it. It's something that's being rolled out that we don't know enough about.
More scrutiny, more testing, more democracy. People need to be able to choose whether we do this, and we need much more information about whether it really is dangerous or not.
There are problems with data transfer rates, which are very good. There's certainly some positives. We'd be able to do lots of things we can't currently do. Very high resolution video, very fast over your phone, and so on and so forth. However, even faster than I can go. But they can also steal data from us in an enormous amount of us, possibly even what we're thinking and saying. Who knows what's going on over here? They're operating in an area which is completely unknown to science right now.
Question.
As a follow-up question, do you have a policy on personal data protection?
Freddie.
Yes, personal data protection.
Richard. Ben.
We have got to criminalize misuse of it in a way which is swinging and which is long-lasting. That means if simply because a company manages to fool the government for a few years or even 10 years that they haven't done anything wrong is not enough. Ever, if it comes out that they have, they should be taken to the cleaners financially, because that's the only way to stop big companies doing it. Otherwise, they will do it. So they will be terrified of breaching this law.
I don't have a policy on this. I have to say that most of the data theft that happens goes totally undetected. And so the question is, how do you solve that problem? It's very difficult. I think the main thing is education. People need to learn more about how to keep themselves safe and keep their data safe. But if we introduce cash so that anybody who wishes to can always pay cash for all products, that's part of the solution.
So again, like Richard, no specific policy. However, I don't believe in regulation for everything. That's just not me. That's not what I believe in. However, I do believe in having regulation in areas that matter and regulation with teeth. So I do believe that we should have regulation in that area that can bite hard and a little bit like Freddie says.
How are they going to finance themselves? Sorry, if it's
Yes, okay, so we'll do Richard, Ben, Freddie. How are you going to live? How are you going to pay for your food bill?
I'm going to continue running my existing businesses. Much of the work that I do for those is in the evenings, so it can be done. I also have income from a flat that I rent out, and I'm also going to try to seek sponsorship for some of the projects that we're going to be doing when I'm leader.
So I currently run my own business. Sorry, I'm looking in the wrong place. I run my own business and it's set up in such a way that I can happily step back as and when required, of which I'm currently doing already. So I'm kind of happy to do that. I don't believe that the UKIP leader should be paid because the party is not in a position to do that now. And I do believe that there should be sponsorship, like Richard says, but all of that money should come straight back into the UKIP coffers.
In my case, I've been running businesses since I was 15. By the time I was 28 or 29 years of age, I became completely self-financing, as in funding. I didn't need to work for another day in my life. Of course, I have continued to work for every day because work is fun. It was nice having a post office van turn up full of sacks. Every sack contained hundreds or maybe thousands of checks, and each check was for £69.95. That was when I was 27. So I don't need the money.
Thank you, Freddie.
Do you support the parents in the ongoing protests against LGBT lessons in schools?
Ben,
Yeah.
Freddie, Richard.
Me first?
Yes.
Sorry. Yes, I do, because I believe in freedom. If they are against it, then they should be able to say so. And I think that I do believe that there should be sex education in schools, but if parents don't believe that's the right thing to do, then they should be given that option to pull out their children.
Yes, I do.
It was my turn, but that doesn't matter. Yes, the parents are being completely correct in this. Furthermore, we should enable them further to have a say to prevent such things even coming on the agenda first, because unfortunately the parents have got in a bit late. The damage has already started to be done. Children's heads are being filled with all sorts of complete nonsense and socialist thinking, and that we have to be fluid in all sorts of ways we don't have to be. It's child abuse of another sort. Yes, I'm on the parent side.
Richard, have you not answered that? Okay. what's your
I
question?
support them. It's that simple. They're absolutely right. And of course, don't forget, this is the encroachment of the state into the private, personal sphere, the family sphere, the individual sphere. And there is too much of that. We're libertarians. We don't believe in a big state. So this is an area where, unfortunately, the state is interfering in what it shouldn't.
Has there been a silent underground conflict between the City Square Mile and Parliament?
Is there a deep state conflict between the city and Parliament? And we'll have that. Ben, Freddie, Richard.
So, sorry, say that again.
Is there, as I understand, is there a deep state conspiracy conflict between the city and Parliament?
Okay. I think there is definitely some friction, and I think the city, in terms of business, I think is probably what you mean, is trying to drive policy, and that's not right.
It's over
That's absolutely, yeah. So I think I understand what you're saying. And I would agree. I think that business shouldn't be directing policy in terms of the government. That shouldn't happen. Government is its own thing, and it should decide policy.
Who's Freddie than you? Go, Freddie, go!
Unfortunately, what shouldn't happen frequently does happen. Ben said it shouldn't, and I agree with him, but it does happen. Money drives everything. We're probably not as bad as they are in the United States, but that is very, very faint praise indeed. The city, of course, drives it. It has enormous lobbying powers. Leads me to the last question, again, about sponsorship. When I see sponsorship, I see the dangers of interference with agendas, and that's something which I certainly would not want to happen with a leadership candidate. I certainly don't want it happening with Parliament, but where there's money, there will be corruption. Where there's
if you're talking about the Corporation of London, when you say the city, it has over many, many centuries, 1,000 years or so, won concessions from the British political establishment, so that it is really a world apart. And it's not actually technically, I think, a member of the EU, even though the UK is. But don't forget that it is also the source of the industry that lays the golden eggs. A huge amount of our government tax input comes from the success of the city as the world's top financial centre. We need to make sure that it stays number one in the world, and we need to protect those industries. But certainly there is a worry that the city doesn't obey the rules that others have to.
How would the candidates define far right, and why, if they believe that we should we avoid going down that road?
And that is Ben, Freddie, Richard. Ben.
The far right is a tag that I don't really understand, because I don't believe that I'm that. I've never been that, and I'm never going to be that. And I don't believe that any UKIPers are either. But I'm sick and tired of us being called far right. And I think, like I've said earlier again, I think if we just get our policy correct, correct, and we don't focus on one topic, then we can start to shed this tag.
Far right is, in fact, a socialist construct which is technically on the left. So the whole thing is completely absurd and ridiculous. I am economically to the right, that is true. But that simply means I'm not crazy. There is no real other answer to it. Otherwise, I'm with Ben on this matter. There is an important distinction, though. In the pejorative sense that it is used, we're talking about any sort of extremist conduct which people don't like is now labeled far right. The words occasionally do have meaning. I, for example, would not go into ethno-nationalism or anything like that. Identity is defined by how you feel.
I filled out political compass. I was one click to the right of the center point on the axes. I think often people think of far right wing as being authoritarian. I don't really agree with that. I don't think I think there are very few people in this country today who are even right wing, let alone far right. And I don't think that far right as a term applies to this party in any way at all.
In 40 years, white Europeans will be a minority in nearly all of their homelands. What will you do to speak about this or reverse this?
That will be Freddie, Richard, Ben. Freddie, go.
Question. Firstly, you're correct. I'm a mathematician, there's no doubt about it. If there are 7 factors operating here, only one of them is in one direction. I'll go through them very, very quickly. The one going in the wrong direction, in terms of your question, is that people of certain ethnicities and races live a shorter time, which is, of course, we don't want them. We want them to live much longer. But some of the practices, like cousin marriage, do not lead to longevity. All the other 6 factors in the same direction. They are immigration legal, emigration legal. They are refugees.
The first thing is we should actually uphold our laws on bigamy, because the state is funding certain people to have large families and lots of children. The second thing is that we need integration. We need to not allow Britain to become balkanized by different communities with very, very different backgrounds and very, very different social mores and attitudes and behaviors.
So alongside Richard, I'm trying to do as much as I can personally to try and stop this. So we're up to 9 now, so we're doing our best. The truth is, we have to be the party of immigration. We have to continue with that. We have to be the party of one rule of law for all. We have to continue to be that. But the truth is, yes, this is going to happen, but we need to bang on about our values and what it is to be British. And it's as simple as that. We can't do any more.
What's your stance on Iran?
Right, we want to know, do you want to declare war on Iran, or do you want to be peaceful neighbours? So that'll be Ben, Freddie, Richard.
Hard truth of the matter is that we are in no fit state to declare war with Iran. We are not. We have 19 operational surface flotilla. We have one of the smallest RAFs in the world. We are not in a position to go to war with Iran, even in partnership with the US. It's something that we've got to try and talk ourselves out of, and there are other ways, be it sort of through government and I don't know, but there's got to be ways that we can try and push our feelings on Iran, but they can't continue to do what they're doing. But like I said, I'll go back. We're not in a position to go to war. No way, just not.
Having aircraft carriers without aircraft and having soldiers without guns and things like that, we are in no position. Further, we've been driven to this position partly by American geopolitics and by EU brinkmanship. EU stupidity has brought us to this. Iran is a crazy country, I'm just being frank, but it is 3 times the population and or almost 3 times the area of Iraq. It's not going to be they're not going to be any pushover, and they would say they're democratic as well. We can't interfere again. We've got to sort this thing out through diplomatic channels and try to keep the world sane. We are in no position to fight any sort of war. We might even lose.
I'm against war, like Ben and Freddie. I do think there are 9 nuclear weapon powers in the world, and the proliferation of nuclear weapons is a very, very dangerous thing, and it's a very destabilizing thing. And I do not wish to see a nuclear Iran. Arguably, it already is nuclear. I don't know how you stop Iran from becoming a nuclear power, but it should be stopped. We should try to stop it. The West and all of the nuclear powers of the world should try to stop it, because it's just another dangerous
Thank you,
state.
Richard. Right. What was your question?
Hello. Hi. Are the concepts of hate speech and hate crime valid concepts that protect vulnerable minorities from abuse, or are they just means of subverting democracy and freedom of speech?
Thank you. That is now Richard, Freddie, Ben. So Richard, go.
Hate speech. The hate speech law is an abomination, and it needs to be got rid of. Crime. We already have many laws about crimes, especially violent crime and so on. So the laws that we had were fine, and I think this is an effort to police people's minds and an effort to police our culture in a way that is very, very intrusive. And I'm against hate speech law, but obviously all crimes, any kind of violent or unpleasant crime, must be policed and stopped.
As with many, but not all of the ills that face our society, this one begins with Tony Blair. He introduced approximately 1,800 new criminal offences, including a whole lot of these and a whole lot of others, which also cover this sort of thing. They're amply covered. Most of these hate crime things are covered by 4 or 5 other laws which they could charge them with. This is a pure attempt at thought control, mind control, and getting the population more. Dumbing down the population helps, and that's where, sirs, your questions about this demographic shift is even more. They want us stupider so they can rule us easier. It goes deeper than you've said. Can you handle the truth? Speak to me afterwards and I'll talk to you.
So that law in particular should be put straight into the bin. It's not one that we need, and we do not want it. We have law, and it's British law, and we should all be under that end of. And that's, I think, if we treat everybody equally, which is what we should do as a party and as a country, then I think we shouldn't have a problem with the existing legislation that we already have.
Right, thank you.
Okay, judicial reform. How do we keep our judges from being political, and how do we get the right people getting legal aid?
Right, well, that'll be Ben, Freddie, Richard. Did you hear the question?
Can you repeat it?
It's about judicial. What should we do about the judicial appointment system, and what can we do to ensure that the right people? What can we do about the judicial appointment system, and what can we do about the merits of legal aid?
So the judicial system, I think, is not fair, and I think some of the appointments that are currently carried out now are, you can see, in some respects, those people are political, and that shouldn't be right. How you fix it, I'll be honest, I'm not sure. But I do believe that it needs to be scrutinised and something needs to change, because these people do need to be neutral. Our law needs to be neutral, and you know, the same sentencing is to be delivered on everybody, regardless of where you come from. When it comes to legal aid, what's really upsetting about that is the people that need it the most now can't get it, and they're outpriced completely. So I think that it should be means tested with legal aid, and you should get it if you need it.
Thank you, Ben.
Common purpose should be abolished. All those who have been members of common purpose should be banned from holding any public office. They have been trained in subverting the rights of citizens. It is an abomination and should be abolished entirely. That's just a starter, though. In North London, I faced a problem that even the dead aren't equal. Dead Muslims and Jewish people, may their souls rest in peace, are worth more than dead others. Because the coroner was said to have committed a crime by not allowing them to have priority when they're dead in burial. That's how crazy the law is.
I don't think you can ban common purpose. Another organisation of its kind will jump up, will spring up immediately. But I do think that judges, people involved in the legal profession, should have to declare if they are members of any kind of political organisation like that. And it is a political organisation, so people need to know who they're dealing with, and there should be much more scrutiny. And I think if there were more scrutiny, judges would not feel comfortable participating in that kind of activity.
This is for our own discernment. Are you a platitudes man or a prince governed by principles?
Ben, platitudes or principles, then Richard, then Freddie. Go.
For me, it would always be principles.
It's very important to have principles, but you also have to be forgiving. You have to recognize that there are times when your principles are going to be watered down, when principles, you have to have a pragmatic approach to principles, because if you don't deal with principles pragmatically, you end up nailed to a tree.
Right. It wasn't about pragmatism, I thought. It was about platitudes. Now, platitudes are shallow, meaningless statements. I have Google installed. I assure you that was what it means. So I'm for principles, mate, and sod the platitudes. We give them the truth hard and fast, and in the long term, that's what gets us votes and support. But we're not doing it for votes, we're not doing it for supports, and we're not doing it for glory points. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Thank you. Right, thank you very much. We're going to have the two final questions. So, out of due respect to the great Mr. Agnew, our wonderful former MEP, I'm going to let him ask a question.
Can all the candidates put their hands on their hearts and say they have no skeletons in the cupboard which the media will drag out?
Right, well, let's start with Ben, then Freddie, then Ricardo. Go. Ben, launch.
Well, any skeletons that I've got are already out there, so I've got none that are hidden, and I'm happy to talk about any of them to anybody offline.
I have no skeletons that I'm aware of.
30 years ago, I was convicted of speeding, and I got 3 points and a small fine, but the court which convicted me no longer exists, so I could have fibbed about it, but I don't do that. No skeletons at all.
We're now going to have the final question, and that will go to, the final question will go to the person who can first answer the question, what is the capital of Outer Mongolia?
Ulaanbaatar. The candidate answered it. I want to ask the question.
No? Right. Well, that's ruined it now. So there we are.
Have another question.
Hello, we'll have Peter.
The West rose to greatness through its objectivity, particularly in science. Let's make a start by saying only those with XX chromosomes can take part in female sporting events, because chromosomes can't be changed by surgery.
There we are, in a nutshell, the trans argument. Do we allow trans women to enter female sports? That's Freddie, Ben, and Richard. Freddie.
Scientifically, the answer to your question is actually no, because there are a very small number of people who have chromosomes other than XX and XY. And these ones, it becomes a much more complicated question. However, the vast majority, we're binary. We're talking about 1 in 1,000 at most. So for those ones, I would look at it in some specific way, but we're talking about very, very, very few people. This is becoming a problem even in chess, the sport in which I indulge, because there are people with very hairy chests who are entering the female chess competitions and winning them. And while I have nothing against their hairy chests, I want their moves to be coming from women if it's women who are playing.
Pass the baton.
Okay. I don't know anything about the chess leagues at the moment, but
Chess leagues.
Chess leagues. The truth is that they absolutely should not. I mean, I believe in personal freedoms. If someone feels that that's the way that they want to be, that's absolutely fine by me. As long as they're acting within the law, not a problem. But when it comes to competitive sport, they should absolutely be competing against their own, because that's the whole fairness of it. And if they aren't, then it's just completely unjust, and it shouldn't happen.
Freddie's raised a very interesting question, which is, how does he know how hairy the chests of chess competitors are? And he obviously goes to different websites to the ones that I go to. Is all I can say. But the answer is no. Men should not be competing in women's sport events, and vice versa. And it's that simple. And the chromosomal issue is the definition.
My answer is low-cut blouses, by the way.
Freddie, enough. Right, we're now going to have the final question, and the final question is going to be asked by the man with the lovely hair right in front of me.
I might go a bit grey, but thanks. Right, so my question is on funding, not as individuals. You'll say you're businessmen and whatnot. I'm talking about political funding, getting funding for the party from political donors. How will you go about, as a leader, getting funding for our party?
Right, you understood that quite clear. It's the donor question, it's the sponsor question. So we will start with Ben, then Freddie, then Richard. Ben, go.
So I would hope that if we sort out our direction of travel and our policy, that it would bring donors back on board. But one person, and I'm not big on employing people and spending UKIP money, but I do believe that the party needs a professional fundraiser. Now that could even be someone who actually funds their own wage, but someone who is there to try and get donors in, to look at the shop and look and think outside of the box on how, as a political party, we can generate money. But that has to be someone who has a role specific to that, and that's something that I would push for.
Planning ahead, I expected we'd be in the position we are in around the turn of the year. So I have approached people. This is in the city, the same city which is corrupt, but which has a lot of money. We have a conflict here. And the conflict is very big. One, if we take the money from the wrong people, then we're going down the wrong path. We just mustn't go down there. Full stop. Also, many of the good people are worried. They are considerably concerned about having their names associated with a shouty street party, which does occasionally some things which really embarrass them. Electoral law, however, forces us to identify these people directly. So I'm already on the case in the city.
The secret here is actually to go and meet the donors, write to them, go and meet them, persuade them, show them why UKIP is the party that they should be funding, show them that we are the party that tells the truth that no one else dares to tell. There are many, many people who have made a lot of money, who have a lot of money, who see the world very, very clearly. And that's a reason why they actually will look at UKIP and think this is something I can support, because we have a great manifesto and great policies and a great track record of really changing the world. So I think that it's about actually going and addressing previous and existing sponsors
now
and donors.
Ends the question session. Please take your seats. We've now ended the question session. Of course, you're free to ask our candidates any questions you may wish at the bar. I can't guarantee they'll answer them. So we're going on to the next stage, whereby we're going to have a 2-minute summing up speech from each candidate. But as Mike Hookham is not here, I've been asked to read out his speech, so I'll start with Mike Hookham's summary. Today, UKIP stands at a critical juncture in its history. Do we go down the road of becoming a niche street protest group? Or do we get to grips and regain our position as a real alternative to the establishment parties of Westminster? In this election, you are not merely selecting a leader, instead you're deciding on the direction this party will take for years to come. If you believe, like I do, that the party should reject any form of extremism and challenge for the Westminster seats, then you will agree that we need to reclaim our position as the party of common sense and the real party of Brexit, a party that the public will vote for. However, let us not underestimate the task ahead. After 18 months of decline into the fringes of British politics, UKIP today stands at less than 1% in the Westminster polls, and our media presence has been destroyed. This is why UKIP needs a leader who can lead from the front in taking on the significant internal and external challenges involved in rebuilding our party. A leader who will build a professional team to take the party forward. Someone who can put in place new internal and external communication structures to maximise the broad range of skill sets our party contains and effectively communicate with our members. A leader who can make us a capable and competent electoral force moving forward, who seeks not only to represent the views of the membership, but the majority of people in this country who are sick and tired of the Westminster status quo. Someone who listens, learns and delegates to the maximum effect, who can reclaim their public profile and rebuild public confidence in UKIP's message. However, above all, a leader who can bring back common sense to the party that championed the concept in politics in the first place. I believe I am the person who can deliver all of those things. My political journey did not start at university with a PPE degree like so many of today's politicians. My political journey began in Hull's fishing community, into which I was born, and further developed on the building sites of Britain as I saw firsthand the effects of EU policy and Westminster weakness. As a working man at the time, Labour opened the floodgates on mass immigration, and I became increasingly disillusioned with the disconnect between the establishment and the ordinary working people. This situation caused me to look for a party that could offer a real alternative. Since joining UKIP in 2007, I've held posts at every level in the party, from branch chairman to deputy leader, MEP to head of UK delegation for the EFDD. My background forms a significant part of the type of politician I've become, and I still retain my original objective for involvement in politics in the first place. To help people toward a better life, a better standard of living, a fairer society, freedom of thought and speech, and protection from those who aim to endanger these values. That is why, as UKIP leader, my focus will be on policy. However, I will not tolerate policies that seek to divide and make our great party nothing more than a political pariah. I believe that our constitution is sound in demanding that the party will conduct itself and its affairs in such a way that it does not discriminate against any person on the grounds of their race, religion, ethnic origin, education, beliefs, sexual orientation, class or social status. I will lead a UKIP with policies based in common sense, whether it be the equal application of the law, a simplified tax system, or effective defence of our realm. I want policy positions that are easy to understand, easily communicated, and which the general public will not be afraid to champion. I want policies that aim to protect our great nation, to ensure Brexit becomes a reality and is the success we all envision. I also want to be a leader who is progressive in how we interact with our membership and how we develop in our policy. I will push forward with plans for more direct democracy within UKIP, using modern technology and communications to provide members and officials with more interaction and transparency than ever before. However, there must be a drastic change if we are to become a party that genuinely represents our membership. Therefore, I would launch an immediate consultation with membership to make September's conference AGM the catalyst of real change. I would like to see change made to the constitution that will allow each region of the country to be represented at the top table through creating a new NEC made up of regional chairs you elect. Side by side with this change, I will also seek to create a new board structure, a professional body to make the party more responsive, flexible and representative on both a regional and national level. No longer can we tolerate any areas of our party feeling alienated or ignored. However, it is my firm belief that any change we make to our party must be based on a bottom-up philosophy rather than top-down structures of the past. UKIP's biggest asset is you, the membership. This is your party. It must represent who and what you are politically. This is my vision for UKIP, and I hope that you will lend me your vote to deliver that. Thank you. We will now pass on to the leadership candidates' 2 minutes summary speech, and we shall start. Okay, 5, no problem. We'll have 5 minutes for each candidate, and we'll start with Freddie, Richard, Ben. Freddie, go.
I won't give you the I'm a man of few words joke. Stuart Agnew has written, our kind former MEP in this room, a testimonial which is reproduced in colour here, and he speaks about me with more perhaps objectivity than I could about myself. I do not underestimate the scale of the job that awaits the new leader of UKIP, which will await me, if you trust me with your vote. It is an enormous job. We have to reverse public perception, which is a very, very difficult thing to do. The public has got this ingrained thought that we are a whole lot of things which we know in our hearts that we're not. I try to bring a mixture of jumpy passion with objectivity and calm argument. I believe the battlefront is at 2 levels. One, it's with each and every one of you. Each and every one of you, because your belief that we can win, we have been on our uppers before, and we have managed to prevail. We are certainly on our uppers now. Any denial that that is the status quo is simply self-delusion, and we don't do that in UKIP. We deal with what's true. The second level is an air level attack, where we get back on the mainstream media. I have continued this battle unendingly. The BBC have hammered me with Tommy Robinson thrice in the period of about a month, but each one with a different attacker. The reason for this was the same attacker wouldn't have come back again because I gave him his guts for garters. Yeah, I'm not having any of this. Yes, I agree and concede all of Tommy's questionable past and all the mistakes he's made and so on. So does he, for that matter. He is not a racist, otherwise we wouldn't be having this at all. He is a man who has made some mistakes, but the central plank of what Tommy Robinson is saying is true. It's beyond a scandal what has happened. It is a damnable outrage. And that has been going on for 20, 30 years because of political correctness. And I damn to hell all those who were a conspiracy to allow this to happen. Fathers were not given the information which they could have done to save their children. I'm being very sexist here, it could be mothers too, parents. To stop what is often a fate worse than death. Because these girls were not just gang raped, they were sex slaved around and lost all their self-esteem and so on, with suicides, drug abuse, all sorts of awful things happening, their lives blighted, while these blighters who we trusted, 7 layers of them, starting with journalists going right up to judges in the parliament and local authority officers and child protective services, the words stick in my craw, and scoundrels in the police as well, have all allowed this to go on. Tommy's right about that. Now I tried with the BBC and I took them on and said, do you or do you not agree that the central point about what Tommy is his angst has got legs? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Or you don't know? Now they tried each one of them, and each time they came a cropper. You want a leader who will lead. That is the primary definition of a leader. Not one who's looking for consensus, one who looks as well for talent everywhere, not a leader who is overconfident. Let me correct something which perhaps some of you may get from the way I position things. I'm as humble as they get, mate. I know nothing compared to what there is to know. And I'm a scientist. Anyone who's a physicist knows that. I actually think there's an unending series of truths there. But I'm now talking about numbers and things like that, which are not really emotional, but this is essentially about numbers. Numbers in terms of money for survival, simply for survival, otherwise we'll cease to exist. If we can't go on paying those excellent people in Newton Abbot, UKIP folds. Money to fund all the sorts of activities, including a general election that might come about, and local elections which will be there before we even realize it. In another 9 months' time, we'll be fighting the 2020 set of local elections. And also we have assembly elections coming up in London, and then a year later in Wales. And all of this needs money. And we need money as well for proper campaigns. We need to persuade donors. I am telling you, this job is very difficult. I love difficult jobs because the one spur for me is people telling me this can't be done. That triggers it. That brings out. That's the way to sucker Freddie, because you tell him it can't be done. I will move heaven and earth to do it. I don't have defeat written in me at all. I don't. I have won hundreds of chess games which I'd already lost, except I didn't resign. And that is over 40 or 45 years of playing it. You have to have this degree of being able to take knocks. And life certainly has given me knocks. I don't blame life for it. I don't blame anyone. It just happens. When you have lived a reasonable amount of time, things happen in your life, things for which you are not responsible, or things which you are responsible for. But the importance is not where they came from. It's what you do then. That is what defines it. That separates men from boys. And for somebody who's a scientist, vote for me.
Hands up if you've never made a bad taste joke. No, not a single hand. Oh, only Andrew. Well done, Andrew. Andrew's made a better stuff than the rest of us. People make bad taste jokes. People have independence of thought. We know recently that leveled at us in interviews on the mainstream media was an attack about a bad taste joke. It was made 3 years ago or more, and we were held responsible for it. And some of us stood our ground on television, on the radio, and said, it's okay. People can make bad taste jokes. You're the BBC. You harbored a prolific paedophile for decades, and you all knew, and you're telling us that we can't make bad taste jokes. Sorry, pal. Not good enough. Not good enough. Okay. This party is full of independent thinkers. There's a reason independence is in our name. We want to be independent. We want to stand on our own 2 feet. We want our families to be independent. We want freedom. It's about freedom. We want to be free from the EU. We want to be free from political correctness so that people can say the wrong thing, so that people can make mistakes, so that people can experiment and bounce back and start again and succeed again. I'm going to give you, the UKIP members who have achieved so much, who've achieved a revolution actually in our politics in Britain, not just in Britain, it's a revolution across the world. This party reasserted the principle of nationhood. Nothing that we should be ashamed of. We all belong to a nation. We're all somewhere people. We belong here, and we love it. And we love this party. We love this party because of that independence of thought and the people we know in the party who never give in, who always fight for what's right. I'm going to give you tools. The tools are going to equip you as members of this party to go out and actually rebuild the party's vote share, put the party back on the map, argue for the party's principles and its driving philosophy of independence for Britain and for us, families, individuals, villages. We're going to build a boomer millennial alliance. The youngsters in the party are going to guide the old people in the party to get online and win. The old people in the party are going to provide the wisdom to the youngsters in the party so that they get things right, that they don't make mistakes, and they go out as well. We all go out as a team and deliver the result that we all want, which is a growing vote share, growing interest in the party and what it has to say, growing income from people that want to fund it. We're going to get much better at how to communicate with voters. We're going to communicate better. And I'm going to give you the tools. They are going to be software. You're going to learn to use them. We're going to have a policy forum so that you don't feel that the party itself, the NEC, the leadership, isn't listening to you anymore, because you'll be able to go on the policy and say, I've had an idea. What do you all think of this? And when you've had 6,000 upvotes and the policy is put in front of the NEC because it's the best idea that's been put forward in the party this month, you are going to be recognized individually You're going to be recognised for putting forward that idea, and the party is going to love you for it, and you're going to love the party for it. We're going to be proud again. We're going to be proud of this party because it's changed the world for the better. And we're going to argue with the people who say that what we did over Brexit is a mistake. We're going to show them they're wrong. We're going to show them why Brexit is winning. And they're going to have to give in. They're going to give in because we're going to succeed as a country and as a party. Our votes are going to grow. That's how we're going to win. I'm going to give you the tools. On June the 23rd, 2016, many people in this room went to counts and polling stations after a long, hard campaign. We knew it was our last chance to preserve this great country and its great history. We knew it was our last chance of independence, and we fought like tigers. And we went to those polling stations, we went to those counts at the various town halls, and gradually the results started to come in. And around midnight, Sunderland came in, and all the newspapers had told us if Sunderland was over 61%, we'd done it. And the grins and the smirks started appearing on our faces as the Ramonas all went home. Cast your minds back to that and know that it's coming again.
So back in 2017, when I stood previously, it was effectively on the same kind of platform. I believed in grassroots. I believed in bottom-up reform of the party. And I'm really pleased, actually, that Mike is now talking about that, because I'm in tune with that. And I'm glad that it's resonated with Mike. That's really, really important. And we've got to do this, guys. The fact is, we can talk about the arguments and the Tommy debate and everything, and we all know that that's right in its essence. The problem is that isn't translating into success at the ballot box for us. And when I joined UKIP, I joined a political party. The only way that we're going to make any sort of difference in the political environment is through the ballot box. So we have a choice. Do we go down the street protest movement kind of route? Or do we try to be the political party that we once were, driving the debate, taking on the fight with the establishment? Because that is essentially where I want to be. Now, I'm never going to have the time in my 5 minutes to talk about all the things that I would like to do. So I urge you to go and look at the website, which is backbenwalker.com. And that'll take you through everything. And I'm happy to answer any questions via email, phone, you name it. But I'm in a lucky position, actually, as one of the candidates, because even though I want to abolish the Welsh Assembly, I have Neil Hamilton backing me, who's one of our high-ranking UKIP officials, if you like, and Gareth Bennett, who was in the race and has stood down. But the reason the reason that Gareth has stood down is because he understands the importance of building from the bottom, giving you, the membership, the tools to move forward. That doesn't happen now. And I understand all of the criticisms of the NEC and the leadership. I get all of that. Like I said, I was talking about them in 2017. But we've got to right that now. We've got to get it right. We can't move forward talking about single issues. We've done it on the EU. We got a big enough kick in when we did that. The truth is we have to be much broader. We have to be talking about things that relate to every working man and every working woman in this country, regardless of race, regardless of religion. It doesn't matter who you are. But if you believe in a small state, a small government, regulation, not much of it, but one with teeth, then vote UKIP. And I want to be in a position where we're giving branches, candidates, parliamentary candidates, the tools to fight the elections. I want to redirect money from the central party to the branches by way of the first year's membership for new joiners and for social media and leafleting, you name it. But the focus has to be on you, the branches. Like I said earlier, I am tired of you guys having to suffer lists that are forced upon you. People that in your region you would never have voted for in a million years, but they're on it for some strange reason that you're never really going to understand. That has to stop. I want to be a party with big, really big shop front policies that speaks to everybody. That's where we need to be. And like I said, I think that I'm someone who will resonate with the normal working man and working woman of this country. Again, where we need to be. Now, the social media thing, we've kind of got that right. We're doing the right things, but that can't form everything. We have to make sure that we're appealing to everybody. If you boil it down again to membership, it's very good that the party are better now, communicating via email. But the trouble is, I know just from my branch, there are huge amounts of people that don't read email. We've got to make sure that we're communicating all of our messages and all of the news to all of our members. The reason we're not carrying people forward at the moment is because we're not communicating properly. It's a basic. You know, being ex-forces, I know that it's a simple chain of command, an easy structure of communication. It's what we need as a party. And I promise you, if you vote for me and you lend me your vote, I will give you that. And I promise you also that when it comes to policy, I want to see a live manifesto, not one that branches and candidates are scrabbling around for when it comes to a week before the election or whatever. We want candidates in place with a live manifesto 1 year, 2 years before your elections. And luckily, because of my support from Wales, we have the staffing ability to be able to run a central policy unit where staff can cost policy which is given to them by their members, by fax, by email, by telephone, by letter, it doesn't matter. But anyone can feed into this central policy unit which will cost UKIP no money. Now, I promise you guys, all right, like I said, I am not big enough and ugly enough to do this on my own, but I want to carry you with me, and that's the only way that we're going to succeed again. So if you're big enough to lend me your vote, I'll be big enough to do the job for you and run this party and win again.
Ladies and gentlemen, the evening now closes, and may I give thanks to Janice and Andy and Debbie for organising tonight so well. Many thanks. If you could give them a round of applause, please. May I also give great thanks to our leadership candidates for travelling so far, putting so much of themselves into this contest, and having to put their lives on hold for the Brexit movement. Great thanks. And last but not least, Freddie, sit down. We haven't finished yet. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. And finally, and most important, many thanks to all of you for taking the time out of your free time to turn up today to meet new people and to ask questions of the leadership candidates. We cannot thank you enough for taking the trouble to come along tonight. So many thanks to you, the members.